this thing recording. Let's see again. All right. So toughen the band up. What that I think is important, a lot of kids I think center around today. You realize we've only gone through one question? No, I only did.
We've touched on a few subjects.
I know, yeah. Kids today, and I notice that schools are guilty of this too, when a kid wants to go into drumming as a career, everything is technique, you know? And you had mentioned a thing before about, you used the word sacrificing certain things in your life, you know, and not that that's a negative, but maybe you could touch on some things that you had to give up to get the band or get yourself to where the band became successful in a working group, you know?
Well, I think...
Or is that important?
I think that one thing you end up taking a good look at is egos. I think you have to sacrifice a lot of times what you might think is right, or you get 2 or 3 really headstrong guys in a band. Mm-hmm. Now, like you say, okay, kids working in a band and trying to get it to where it's successful.
Right.
Okay, there's a lot of things that are due to the Loverboy band becoming successful. Management, like I explained, and the record company, a great record company, CBS Records, and timing and a little bit of luck and good tunes and Paul, I mean the chemistry of everybody. Right. But in the beginning, it all has to start back with the chemistry of the band and the tunes. And I think that early germ was really good in the Loverboy band, and we all got along a lot, and we all respected each other. We all had different schools. I came from like the R&B with the jazz fusion type. I played, you know, the group I was in, we did a lot of Stevie Wonder and Chick Corea and Billy Cobham and Steely Dan and Chicago and Santana. So there was a lot of that kind of influences in my early playing days, you know, when I was making money and playing 6 days a week and stuff like that, and colleges and, you know, schools.
Yeah.
And Scotty came from a jazz funk thing. He came from a lot of funk. Mm-hmm. And did a lot of, you know, he didn't really play that much rock. And Dougie is classically trained. He didn't play in any heavy rock bands at all. And he played in, I think, maybe one sort of country rock, not country rock, but it's sort of a pop rock country group. Just a little while before the Loverboy band. Dean has a lot of influence. He goes back to R&B and blues and rock and roll. And Michael comes from rock and roll. Those influences all became one very healthy melting pot, and we all respected each other. It was a good blend. Mm-hmm. And we all had to realize, you know, that some people, we all have ideas, and I think that some bands have troubles communicating, and I think that's very important. To become successful is to communicate with one another and be able to back down maybe. If you feel you're in the right and the other guy, maybe he wrote a song or he feels that part was too busy, well, try it. Mm-hmm. Try it his way. Tape it and listen to it and live with it, you know. It's only music. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't mean that, you know, in a derogatory way. Music is a beautiful thing, right? It's a very give and take thing. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't be so serious, and no matter what level, in my own belief anyway, that you should ever come between people when you're writing a song and you end up all telling each other where to go and you storm out of the rehearsal hall because of 2 guys fighting and saying, no, it's going to go my way. No, it's going to go my way. Mm-hmm. And then it just blows everything apart. And maybe 2 or 3 other guys in the band look at these 2 guys, and if they're the leaders or the directors in the group, right, and they see these 2 guys always scrapping and always fighting, and you get this dissension happening. I mean, you got to play as a team. I really believe so. I mean, I played a million team sports, soccer, rugby, track, and all that stuff. And I really feel that you know, that applies. And that's really helped us a lot to stay together and enjoy each other's time when you're working real hard in the studio, or you're at rehearsal, you're at sound check, or you're playing. And sometimes you just got to blow it off and say, no big deal. I'll try it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, 9 times out of 10, maybe he was right, you know, and you go, it's not so bad after all. So I'm playing simple lick here. Maybe late in another song somewhere down the line, you get to play what you wanted to play, or the way you wanted to express yourself in another song. There's ways to ways to work around that. And I find that a lot of kids, you know, come up and talk to me and say, man, I can't work with my guitar player. Mm-hmm. Man, he's such an egotistical guy. He just wants everything his way, and he's the soloist in the band, and everybody else has got to play simple around it. And I think that, I mean, if there is really an obvious problem and somebody's dictating in the group, then it should be seriously looked at. But I think that's really important to be able to communicate in order to become successful. Because I know bands like REO Speedwagon, they haven't been around this long for nothing. Groups like Styx, all these groups that have been around for a long time and made a lot of successful records and tour, continuing doing very good business and making good records and staying together without firing this guy and firing that guy. I mean, sooner or later, you're all going to get tired, I'm sure. You got your separate lives to live and families and so on and so forth. And someday maybe you all just decide, okay, that's it. We all want to go into separate projects or whatever, but, you know, everybody will realize that when it comes. I think that that's the key, you know, for that area anyway. And I believe that we have that magic, you know, that being able to talk and communicate. We finished our tour, I remember one time last year, and we worked really hard all through 82. And the tour ended in Orlando, Florida, and we were just like, we really were exhausted, and we needed a break, and we all needed to get away from each other. And the last night, we were sitting there, and you think, okay, God, the gig's over. I can't stand your guts. I got to get to my room, and I can't wait till my flight in the morning, and I'm going home. And everybody go home, right? We all sat up and partied together, and sat in one little room, nobody else around, and we reminisced about the tour and this date, and remember that one night when you were late and all this stuff. And we sat around, had a few beers, and had a lot of laughs. And all of a sudden, we stopped, and we all looked at each other and went, this is beautiful. This is great, you know? Like, this is really, it's magic, because we felt that there really was a good thing there. Because we could be sitting here at the end of the tour, all together in the room, having a few beers, and we all just said, well, we're heading off tomorrow. Everybody have a good holiday, you know? And we'll see you at rehearsal, that kind of thing. And that was really good, you know. Even after all that work, you think, you know, tension and fatigue and all that, you know, just kind of push everybody apart. So hopefully, you know, we can keep tabs on that. I really think that applies in anybody that's in starting groups. You know?
We're getting a lot of letters recently, it seems, from kids who are in heavy metal bands who totally screw themselves up. Tendinitis. You know, I've had guys writing with like their left hands when they're righties, and sciatica. You know, and back problems.
It's really that heavy, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So.
Now, how old would these people be?
Early 20s. You know, and I think it just comes from.
Playing too hard off the top? Or not having the, I'm wondering if anything.
I think it might be, and this is just a guess, where there's a lot of guys that hear the quote unquote studio sound, right? So they'll deaden their drums, and then they'll go on stage, bang! Smash them rather than like leaving them open to get the most sound. So it's like hitting extra hard to try to get a sound that's just not going to come out there. But what I want to ask you is, if you had to learn to play harder, if you had to learn to play forcefully, if there's a technique to that or an art to doing that.
I think that just came naturally with me.
Is it using heavy sticks?
2Bs.
2Bs. It's pretty heavy sticks.
It's fairly heavy.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to go from the marching 3S to 2Bs.
Were you playing bands with the 3S's?
No,
yeah.
Never did that.
Yeah.
That was too heavy. I didn't like that sound. And I play with a plastic tip.
Yeah.
And I like the ping on the
J-Mo Johnson, remember the Allman Brothers? J-Mo always used the 3S. To this day.
Those are big. Especially if you use a butt end on the snare.
His hands like this.
He's a big guy.
Like 7A's, you know.
I didn't really learn any. I can't think of anything, although I was really, like I said, really athletic. So I was a long distance runner and did a lot of stuff and was really physical. So to play real hard seemed to come natural. Beginning of tours, my arms get sore, and then as we get going, I get more in shape. I lift weights and stuff a bit, just to stay trim, light weights.
Toning?
Yeah, stuff. Just in the dressing room, you know.
Yeah.
And just kind of stay up, and do a bit of running and that. But I didn't realize that it was that heavy with a lot of kids writing in.
It's and it just seems to be
playing too hard. Maybe it's they're all learning real heavy metal songs, or are they talking about different types of music too?
Mostly heavy metal.
Yeah.
Mostly heavy metal. Maybe another thing too is
playing over real loud amps of that, and they're just wailing away.
The shit out of the drums. Yeah. No mics maybe, or minimal miking or something like that. You know, I don't know what it is. But we were trying to. Another thing that we just did it's not been printed yet, an LA studio roundtable. And guys like Jeff Porcaro was there and Kelly and these guys, and they were talking about the Simmons drums.
Yes.
Jeff was saying how from whacking the shit out of those, it's like, wham, hitting that. And he's been noticing some physical problems.
Yeah, I tried playing those a couple times just in Vancouver in some studio situations. Well, to play, no. God, to play was really intense. It was really intense. Like, for me, I like that, that fluid response.
Yeah.
And my arms were sore. I did this little studio thing just for a friend. I went in and they had the drums already set up. He just wanted my kind of feel for the song. So I went in. I couldn't play my kind of feel.
On the Simmons?
The Simmons ended up making me play the way they are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I couldn't open up with them. And I ended up ducking the track. I said, I can't do it. Which is a drag, because I really wanted to. But they had the Simmons up, and they liked the sound, you see. They wanted to use the Simmons tom sound in that. Right. So when I played them, I got this weird response, and I guess maybe if I had a set of my own and I was practicing, I could have gone in under better circumstances and be more prepared. But going in straight into the studio and playing, just the pads really threw me off first time. And then I guess, going into the studio too, I wanted to be real good and didn't quite capture the feel.
Yeah.
So
your studios, you are using Ludwig now?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to mention that, or are you thinking of switching, or
no,
staying the same?
Yeah.
Not going to do the endorsement.
No, I'm going to.
Well, did your set obviously got a bigger set when you started with Loverboy? I bet your set changed though at a point. The set you have now is not the set you started with, probably, right?
This, you mean the Loverboy?
Yeah.
Band? Yeah, I started with my champagnes.
Mm-hmm. Four piece.
It was what did I have? I had a 6 and an 8, no bottom heads.
Single headed.
Yeah, and then I had 13, 14 bottom heads, and 16, 18 floors.
Pretty big kit.
24 by 14 kick, superphonic snare, timbale, and 3 or 4 crashes, ride, and cowbell. And started the Loverboy, played in that, and did the little tours and stuff. And then when we started headlining in '82, I bought the Maple Ludwigs.
You did.
I bought the Power Toms.
Double-headed?
Yeah. And I love that kit. But I picked out 4 sets out of the drum shop in Vancouver. They had 4 double kick Maple Ludwig sets in the shop. They got this big, huge shit and came in. And I went, I love this set. I mean, they look great. And I said, but can I pick out of all the different sets? Because they were all huge sets of 6 to 18.
Mixed and matched?
So I mixed and matched all the drums that had the nicest tone. So out of like maybe 3 or 4 13-inch toms, I would find one that was real hot, and then I would match that up. And I spent a week and a half. They had a little studio in the back. I spent a week and a half playing these damn things.
Picking out the drums?
Yeah, coming down every couple of days. Oh, I know. God, that was... Oh, God. Boom, crash, crash. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Changing drum heads. Went from lightweights to rough coats to heavyweights. And in a week and a half, I knew the set that I wanted. And they said, finally, you're going to buy the goddamn things, I said, yeah, okay. That was great. I had great fun. And I'm playing that kit.
So what is it? What do they got?
I have 6.
From left to right?
From left to right, in stereo. 6 by 6, 8.
8 by 8?
Yeah. 10, 12, 13, 14, 16, floor tom by 16, 18 by 16, back floor tom. And 24 by 16 kick.
Deep kick.
Front head with 10-inch hole on the right, looking towards the drum in the left bottom corner. And that's a normal rough coat Emperor, or just a Remo, I guess it'd be. And on the batter side, you have a sound dot, black, clear with the black dot. And I have a 6.5 superphonic snare with an Emperor rough coat.
Really?
On the top.
Great.
And timbale, 14-inch timbale. And it's just an old beater timbale. It's something I've had for years, and it's real funky. I think it's an old Silvertone or something, but
really, yeah.
It's just got a real cheesy sound, and I really like it. I play a Diplomat rough coat on it.
No kidding.
Yeah. And I really like it. It's just got a real frat to it, And it doesn't have the real traditional timbale sound, but I like that because I've tried them, and it's a bit too Latin American sound to have that. So for the rock, it's got a real nice bite.
With brass?
No, it's
chrome.
Just chrome, yeah. And it's really neat. It's kind of funky. So I don't want to get rid of it. I've tried. I've bought a couple of real good timbales. Yeah. And it just sounded a bit too. It doesn't ring as long either. So it's nice and cheesy. Anyway, what I have. I'm endorsed with Remo. So that's an example. I've played Remo heads for years and years.
What do you got? Like all across the top?
Off the top, I have Ambassador. Rough coats.
Okay.
What am I saying? That's in the studio. I play clears live
best or clear head slide.
Diplomats in the bottom.
Yeah.
On all the toms.
Yeah.
And in the studio, on the first album, I used rough coats, Ambassador, top, bottom was Diplomats.
Rough coats?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, Emperor rough coat.
Now, did you use this set on the first album, or did you use the champagne?
I used the champagnes on the first album.
Okay.
And had a few troubles because I had them for so long and I've been through so many Canadian winters, man. The floor toms were going a little out of round, and I didn't have proper cases in those days. I had the fiber cases, and they're in the back of some old pickup truck, and they're warping and going and cold and hot. And on the second album, I used the maples, and I had a lot of luck with them.
Do you notice a difference between an uncovered wood drum and a covered wood drum, especially in recording?
What do you mean uncovered? You mean like a lacquer?
No, not the lacquer, but you had the black, the pearl.
Oh, the cortex on the outside, as they called it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Between or one without that on it. You notice the difference?
Well, it was hard to tell with that set because that set in '74 that I got. Well, it was the original set 69, and then I added to it in '74.
Yeah.
I added, the 14 and a different kick.
Want me to
74. Yeah, sure. Ludwig sprayed a real weird, some kind of stuff on the inside of the shells.
Yeah, I remember this.
And it was like a gray with a black spotting.
Right.
And that really made the drums real bright. And I always found those drums, I needed more tape on them to dampen them down, especially in the studio I noticed it more. So when I went to the maples, I found them a little warmer and a lot more consistent all the way around and, real good for tuning.
Were they round too? You had no problems with truing the shells?
No. On my maples?
Yeah.
No, that's the most consistent set I've ever played. And for 2 years now of all the road work we've been using and everything, they've stayed good all the way. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of this tour in June, I bought a set of sonars.
You did?
Yeah. I really got turned on to Steve Smith's sound, and I like the sonar people and stuff. And so I flew to Boston and I talked to all the music in there. I went and I bought a set. I didn't do an endorsement. And I bought a set, and I bought a big kit, double bass drums, and their power toms, but their power toms were even deeper. And they were the 9-plies, not the 12-ply, the Binga.
Yeah.
And they were too thick. After about the first 2 weeks of the tour, I had a lot of problems. I almost fired my drum tech.
Really?
Out of it because I'd come to sound check, and he couldn't tune them. And I'm going, Sandy, is this kit too much for you, or what's the problem? And, I'd spend hours trying to get these heads on, and some of the smaller drums, the heads wouldn't even fit inside the hoops and stuff.
Okay.
And I was and 4 of the drums went out of tune, went out of round. Yeah, the couple of floor toms, and I just went, wow. And it was such a struggle set, and they were great drums, real good hardware and everything, and a nice, good company and everything. And and I met him in Germany. I met all the people in Germany when we went over and stuff. And there wasn't any problems that way. It was just the drums just didn't fit, and the sound too was a bit too dead. So we got to Seattle 2 weeks into the tour. I was still struggling, and the band was kind of going, And I was dumping all over Sandy and a drum tech, and I said, "Well, what are we going to do?" And he said, "Let's bring the Ludwigs down from Vancouver." And I said, "Okay." So we did, and he set them up in the back.
Yeah.
And we had the sonars on stage for the sound check. And I went in the back, and I just sat down and just did one roundhouse fill around the kit. Yeah. And just freaked out and went, "That's it. There it is." And he said it only took him 5 minutes to tune the drums. And I said, "Get him up there." So they pulled the sonars down, put the Ludwigs up, and it was great. It fit right back in, So it could have just been a combination of the 9-plies being a bit too much for me, and maybe the drums. So we measured all the drums, and there was a couple that had gone out on me. So that didn't work out. So they're back at home sitting in cases in the warehouse.
For sale, anybody'd like to buy it.
So actually, what I want to do, though, really, nothing against sonar, really. When and if I ever get off tour, probably in January when we finish, I'm going to go back and just look at the drums again real closely and just see what the problems is, and then maybe talk to sonar about it, rather than just saying, "Well, your drums sucked" or anything like that. No, that's not the case at all. Because I haven't had any time to go home and really research. All I could do is make a change on the road, because when you're touring every night, there's no chance. There's no time to mess around. It's got to be right. And I know that the Ludwigs worked. we went with those, and everything's been fine ever since. But I haven't had a chance to go home and look at what the problems are.
Right.
And maybe make some constructive criticisms. I'm just going to let it lie for a while till I can get home and take a break and look at them. So that was a bit unfortunate because I really hoped that they would have worked.
Yeah. You should talk to Debbie up there, Debbie Olden. Yeah, that's cool.
Drummers are always changing, and I guess I really wanted to try something different and see how it worked for me. And in rehearsal, we did pre-production for the tour.
Sounded great.
And they sounded fine to me,
Yeah.
But they changed within a week of playing, and the hot lights and temperature changes. I had a lot of problems changing heads and hoops, and the metal hoops and the bass drums created a lot of problem with rings in the kick. We took a long time to try and find kick drum sound.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, Paul and our engineer up front just went nuts, man. He pulled their hair out. We went through like 4 different mics, and the Ludwigs just took no time at all. Just a real natural sound. And I play open with a little bit of masking tape on the bigger toms, 13 down to 18, just a strip, and the bottom heads aren't muted at all.
I get a lot of letters from kids saying, "How do I get the heavy metal deep thud tom-tom sound
with overtones?"
I can't. The only thing I'm figuring there seems to be. I think the problem lies with.
Well, it's what they hear through a PA and what the drum actually is sounding like. Sometimes they're like two different things.
Yeah, no. How about
because they'll go to a
too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Studio and all that stuff.
Exactly. You'd be surprised what sound you get out of a drum that sounds so shitty.
Yeah.
I've had snare drums that I can hardly play because it's tuned down and 2 or 3 lugs are tuned right off, taken right off the hoop. Oh, that's the sound right there. That's what we want. You gotta be kidding. I can't play this thing. It feels like a goddamn mud pie. We're not touching it. We're playing it. I'll go, okay. So there's tape on it and there's tissue on it. 2 lugs are taken right out. And they love it and it sounds great, right? And in the studio, and I come back in, I listen to it, it's not bad. But I like,
Can you think there's specific tracks where you had that have gone on record with a snare like that?
Yeah, Jump on the second album, and Gangs in the Street on the second album. Yeah, and the new one, it was funny. We were trying to get the snare drum sound, and Prime Your Life. And that was another heavy song. And they were doing all this EQ and everything, and I was, that's not right. I was getting these weird boinks out of the drum, so I tried the Woodshell deep. I had like 4 different snare drums in I rented from the drum shop. Had a Ludwig Coliseum deep one. That didn't work. That had a weird boink. We couldn't get rid of detune, different padding, not padding, different mics. And after about like 5 hours of this, like you just go, okay, let's find the snare drum. And 1 second, the second engineer walks over and he grabs the snare drum out of the corner. And the studio had a snare drum in the back somewhere, and it had an old funky. It's just a beat-up old superphonic Ludwig, right? It was in really rough shape. And it had a couple of holes in the bottom head. And there was a few snares missing, right? And it had a sound dot on it. And it was, like, really used. And he walked over. He said, this drum usually works pretty good on some of our sessions. I'm going, what? Plunks it down. We throw on, I can't remember, we had a couple of mics that we were using. We were pretty close to the sound. But they had a lot of EQ and stuff on it. Put it down and just hit it once. And everybody went, yeah! And I went, no! Right? And they said, don't move. Let's go to the track right now, right? And I go, okay. And it sounded like $1 million.
It did.
It did. Yeah. It sounded great. And we hardly had to do anything to it. It was just one of those things.
On that one cut on that album?
But we usually don't change too much. We don't mess around with a lot of stuff. Once we get a good sound, we try and stay fairly consistent and just watch the tuning on the snare drum and make sure that, like if you're running the track 2 or 3 times down and you get it real honed in, you're real close. Okay, go back, check the tuning on it, make sure that it's in the ballpark, and then go for it. So we don't really go from track to track trying a lot of different drums and that kind of thing, because you can really miss a lot of time. We like to try and we go for the energy, and the consistency of playing the track. And
so you couldn't hone in on the heavy metal deep thud, huh?
Yeah, because it can come out of anything. But I think that a lot of EQ.
What does EQ do? Can you define that? If you've got a shitty sounding snare drum, somebody EQs it, what does that do to it? Or a good sounding?
Well, you can add a lot of bottom and tone and depth to a drum that doesn't have it naturally. And a lot of times snare drums tend to sound boxy, and usually that's out of the drum not being tuned properly, or the snares maybe being too tight, so they don't have a chance to respond, or the bottom head being too tight. and the bottom head not being able to, because as soon as you hit the top head, the bottom head goes down from the impact. And if the snares and the bottom head are real tight, there isn't that chance for the two to respond and giving you that fat, heavy metal sound. So if you need that sound, a lot of times I like to detune the bottom head and let the snares off a little bit. It sounds a bit garbagey, but for the song or to go onto a track, sounds pretty good,
Yeah.
And you get a bit of that slop.
So sometimes you're sitting in a drum set.
Rather than detuning the bottom head or the top head and losing the action. So I like to try that before EQ and then add a bit of the bottom, because of what we use in the studio is 2 mics, one in the bottom, one in the top. So we like that. And a lot of times we'll EQ the bottom. I don't know if they're out of phase. I don't know if they would do that, but just a different sound, because the bottom mic is picking up the snares and the garble that adds that real nice heavy metal sound. And the top gives you that attack and the stick click. So if you're hitting with a rim shot in the song, you can get that snap in the top and add that real balls to the snare from the bottom head. And we do that live too.
So sometimes you could be sitting at a drum and what you're hearing is a lot different than what the guys in the audience are hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Or even on record, same thing.
That's usually the case.
Yeah.
Because you can I'm surprised sometimes, bands, you hear the drums sitting in the back with the tuning them up, and, it's kind of this and that, and you hear them through the PA, and you sound, wow. Like one of the best drum sounds is Stan Lynch from Tom Petty.
Really?
And the first chance I got to see his drums, we did some shows together in Germany on one of these big shows with REO Speedwagon and ourselves and Flock of Seagulls and Chicago and a couple of other groups, and it was a great show in Dortmund, Germany. And Stan's a great man. He's a real gentleman. And I asked him if I could see his drums, because I always admired his sound, live and on record. So I walked up, and here was this simple little kit, and the heads were all beaten. I would never have my heads that long on my drums. And the toms were like rough coats. I think they were ambassadors. And they were all pitted, and the snare was pitted and kind of detuned and stuff. And the snare, I hit it and I went, oh wow, that's not what I expected. I expected this great big huge snare drum, 6 or 9 ply wooden snare drum deep, 8 inches deep or something. It's just a normal snare. And then I hear them up front, and they sounded like $1 million. They were so fat and so, they sounded just like the record.
Yeah.
They just have a good engineer, and he knows how to get good sound out of the drums, and just the right mics for those particular drums. And of course, Tom's playing. Stan's playing with Tom, and so many variables, really. We have their sound man now, by the way.
Yeah, you still their sound man? Yeah. When you're doing a record, what is the role between drummer, producer, and engineer? Band comes in and they've got pretty much an idea what they want to do, and then is there kind of a give and take situation between what you want to do and what the producer has in mind, and then what the engineer has in mind?
That's the way we work. It's very open. I know a lot of situations that aren't, talking to other people, that have a very restricted where the producer is running the show. But we have it, it's pretty open. And I've been very fortunate that way through all the sessions that I've ever done, where I've been able to, find that compromise. Of course, it is give and take. And if they have an idea, they feel that it's too busy of a lick, or the snare's too tight, or you're playing too fast, I like to say in tempo, and you feel, no, the song demands this, and they go, well, we kind of feel that if you just pulled it back a little bit, just played behind the beat.
They say playing too fast, they say playing in tempo?
Well, I actually used the wrong word. I just meant that, say on the beat versus behind the beat. Okay.
Yeah.
If the song's too fast, the song should be slowed down, let's say. And it's just a real minor feel thing that you're playing up, loosen it up a bit, And if you feel, no, I think it needs this kind of energy, you have to be open about it. You have to look at it and say, okay, well, he's a producer, and Paul also co-produces our albums. So you got to try it. You really do have to try it and see how it sounds, and take them both and listen to them. Take them home in your little cassette, run a copy, and go home and see which one. And you'll all know. You'll finally decide, and maybe you'll still be adamant, and then it'll come down to a vote, and everybody say, "Well, we like this feel, you like that, and this is kind of the way it's going to go." So, but that rarely ever happens with us. So we have a pretty open working situation between the producer, engineer, and ourselves. The engineer primarily gets the good sounds and works around between the producer, and we run our tracks with everybody together off the top. We don't just go in and have the drums just play. We don't cut tracks that way. And then everybody come down and overdub to me.
Yeah,
that's pretty sterile. I don't know of many people that would do it that way. I know a lot of people that would maybe play to, a guitar player would go in, play to a click track, lay down a rhythm guitar or a piano if they want a real rigid track, and then have the drummer come in and play to that, and then the band come in and overdub on top of all that, and he ends up playing to an actual click track in a roundabout way. We don't do that although we did do a thing on the new album on Strike Zone that was the first time I ever played to a click.
Really?
Which was quite a challenge, and it wasn't actually a click. It was what we call a Fairlight keyboard, and it's a computer keyboard, and it plays perfect time. So the sequence that Dougie set up for it plays in perfect time. But as we were going along through it, like, it's very hard. You know, it's going along, so you got to stay in time with it. So what we did is we set up a drum program on it that was playing the same pattern as me, and pumped that through the phones at me. So I played like to double drums. Wow. So rather than having a stereo, we had.
You had to play along with it.
And I played along with that, but got in the groove with it, right?
Yeah.
So I jammed with it for like, a couple of minutes and said, okay, I got the feel of it. I got it. And then played to the bass and the guitar and then left the keyboard line out. And then Dougie just did a hand thing, right? So I used that as the click track, which was much more inspiring, but it was in perfect time, right? And then therefore, when they laid down the sequencing for the keyboard stuff, there was these planes and helicopters and all this stuff, right? Those all come in perfect time. And then when they come up later in the song, it's all punched in and they come in exactly again. You punch in bar 36 and woof, bar 36. They come back in again. So it plays itself, right? So it all had to be in right time, or the music wouldn't be in time when the helicopters came back in, you see?
It's not like the old record sessions.
Oh, shit. So, and I'm kind of a traditionalist. I at first I was a bit opposed to it, and I thought, in order for me to learn, as a percussionist and get it, and it was a challenge. I said, I want to do this. I really want to try and make it work. So I tried, and went for it. And it took a little while at first to get in the groove to playing with it. And then once I got with the other drum track, which was playing the identical track to me, it was, actually no, the hi-hat pattern was different, but the snare and kick was identical. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It's quite a challenge, especially when the song starts taking off on the end, right? Yeah. And you really want to go, you want to surge with it, but you feel the track playing the time and it's keeping you back.
Right.
So you play a bit rigid and you don't flow. So what we did is we did fade. We played close to 2/3 of the song with the track, and then just in the control room, faded it down. So as it went along, I was in the pocket, and then it just faded it out in my phones,
right?
The drum track, and just let us cruise on from there. So that was lots of fun. All of a sudden, you go along, and now the drum track's gone, and I'm thinking, okay, but I still got to hold together, stay in there. But then you've got that tension, so the song could build, because we felt that it would be too sterile to just stay in that real rigid groove. Everybody has their own way of doing that. That was fun.
I would think that would almost even be harder than with a click track and the double drums, But switching.